Alright, welcome back everybody. This is part 24 of how to build a neck-through bass. Last time I left off, we were giving this bass its oil finish. That's now completed. It's had a little bit of time to sit and cure up, which is nice because it's been humid here lately. So I tend to give each coat of oil a little bit longer when we have high humidity. And then there was about a week there where I was cycling through a bunch of other builds, so I'm finally coming back to this one to continue this video series. What we're going to do today is map out the electronics holes, the holes for the pots, and we're going to shield the cavity after we drill those holes. The first thing I like to do is inspect the cavity. Just be sure that there's no sharp little wooden splinters or anything sticking out. Sometimes on these little holes where you have drilled for the wires that are going to come down into the cavity from either the bridge or the pickups, there can be a little tear out on the inside, so you want to be sure and remove that. Just feel around, blow, be sure that there's no dust or debris in there that could disrupt the copper that's going to stick in there eventually here. Next thing to do is map out the holes. Now everyone has a different process. I made what's called a cookie, and I have lost it. This is what I put on the inside of the cavity. It has the holes marked. What we're going to do on this one is what I call my 4-knob configuration, which is going to consist of a couple stacks and a couple singles. So I'm just going to lay that in there. I'm going to grab a pencil. If I make another one of these inside cavity cookies for marking this, I'm going to drill the holes a little bit larger so that I don't have to extend the lead on my pencil, but this works. Extend the lead, map out each hole, and that is that. So that I can see that more clearly, I'm going to use a silver Sharpie and just go over each little pencil mark. And then for the jack, this is something that's part of my design. If you look here, there's a flat side. That's where the washer and the nut is going to bear against when I tighten the jack down to the side. So it's important to have a flat edge there. And I'm basically going to aim right in between the two rear pots. So right there, just put a dot. All right. Now we're going to start each hole. I just hold on to the instrument and hang the edge of it over the side of the bench. And just go in from the inside. Once they're in, they're in. There's no going back. And then we're going to go ahead and drill out the pilot hole for the jack as well. And I'm doing this while holding the instrument flat to the bench. Come here. Alright. Pilot holes are drilled. The next part is fun. I use a step bit. And currently I have all pots that are a little bit different size threads and shafts from each other, and I know them very well, so I know exactly which portion of the step bit to stop on each one. If you don't know, get some calipers out, right, and measure the pot, whatever it may be. Just figure out how big of a hole you need to drill and know when to stop. If you drill too big of a hole, you're going to have problems. You're going to have pots shifting around and popping loose. It's no good. One other thing I'm going to do while I have the instrument in front of me, I'm going to put some little markers that tell me where each one of these holes coming into the lower cavity are located from the top. if you look at any of my basses that I've built and you pop this cavity off, you'll see these little lines that I've drawn on each one of them. That's just my system. It works for me. Alright, let's drill these out. I'm going to turn the bass on its side, and I'm going to proceed first the volume and tone pot. Now the blend. Now the bass and treble. And the mid-range, which will be the push and pull active passive. Now I'm going to turn it the other way, dump that out. Before I set the instrument down, I'm going to brush all this off. Well, set that where it's clean. And I'll just do this. Now we're going to come at it from the back. There we go. Next is the hole for the jack. This one just goes all the way through. I don't know if y'all can see that or not. Let me angle the camera just a little bit. By camera, I mean phone. There you have it. And there you have it. There's the holes for everything. Looks nice and clean. Blowing the dust out, being sure it's as clean as can be in there. The next step is to prepare our copper that's going to be the shielding. It's going to line the inside of the cavity. I'm going to set the base aside. Before I do that, I'm going to measure the height of the sidewall. And we're right at 31 millimeters on this instrument. I have this piece of MDF that makes a good cutting board for this step. I have this little, I don't know what you call it, a scoring device. That's important to have. You'll need some scissors and some copper. I buy rolls of this stuff. So the last cut I made on this roll was nice and straight, and what that tells me is I'm going to go ahead and cut the side pieces that are going to go on the side wall of the cavity, which are going to be exactly 31 millimeters tall. I'm going to use this is my what is this called? My string spacing rule that I use for marking the string nuts. We'll use this later in the build. But it also makes a great straight edge for cutting this stuff. You can use any kind of a ruler or straight edge. Good sharp razor blade, or an X-Acto knife, or you can draw the line and cut it very carefully with scissors, whatever works for you. First thing is mark that 31. I'm going to do one entire piece, and that's going to make it about 3/4 of the way, almost 4/5 of the way around my cavity sidewalls. 31, 31. Nice. And then we're going to mark another one, but shorter. And we're not even going to use this long straight edge. I'm just going to use my ruler. And that's going to be the smaller piece that does the remainder of the wrap on the inside and go down about this far. 6-7 inches, somewhere in that ballpark. It's there's going to be some excess that gets cut off with minimal overlap. Alright, so there's those two pieces. Set those aside. Now we're going to take the cookie, the inside pattern again. And I'm going to be sure to lay this down in the fashion that when I look down in the cavity, it would reflect the same way that the pots are looking up at me. Like, I don't want to do it this way. That would be for a lefty. I'm going to set this down, and I'm going to leave about a 1/4 inch or so, maybe 9 millimeters, somewhere in that ballpark of extra overhang around this pattern. And to create that, instead of tracing directly around this, I'm going to angle this and do like so. And this is something I do by feel. I've done it enough times, I have pretty consistent results. And we're going to cut that out. These scissors are getting dull. I go through about 3 or 4 pairs of scissors a year. Okay, we have these. I'm going to set these aside. Alright, we're going to start with this piece first. It's going to go straight in. When you take this paper backing off of this copper, you want to pull the paper from the copper, not the other way around, otherwise it will curl up on you and stick to itself. If you're new to this, if you've never done this before, plan on trying it about 7 or 8 times before you nail it. Very gently, just start telling it where to go. Once I get a portion of the middle touching, I'll take a lighter. You can use a lighter or a piece of wood, something with a flattened front to it, and just start smoothing this down. It's almost like you're ironing this copper down flat. Slowly work it up to the corners of the edges. I'm looking to avoid any air pockets, any major wrinkles. There's always going to be some. That's just the way this stuff behaves. But I'm going for as smooth and tightly fitting of a covering of this copper as possible. Like so. Now we're going to take the big piece for the sidewall. And I'm going to lay this in very carefully, because this likes to really stick to the sidewall and go in crooked if you're not careful. Very gently press it along the sides, doing my best to maintain a very straight alignment to the front. That looks good. You got to be careful with this stuff too. It's razor sharp. It will cut you to smithereens, and you won't even know it until you go to clean your hands with some sort of a solvent like acetone or denatured alcohol or whatever. That is how you know where to find the little cuts. Just clean your hands with naphtha. Okay, we're going to take this this extra piece. I mentioned there was going to be a little bit of extra. What I'm going to do is lay it in here and just eyeball how much overlap I want and cut that right there. There. Now we're going to get the soldering iron on. Bring that into the picture. Regarding the soldering iron, spend the money and get a soldering station. This is one from Heiko, which I don't know that you can get anymore. If they do still make them, I'm not sure where. I honestly haven't looked into it. When I first bought this one, it went up in smoke one day, and I had a buddy of mine replace the startup capacitor, and it's been good ever since. So, yeah, this thing's going on about 10 years now. It's been working steady for me. I started off with the little Radio Shack plug-in kind, and just terrible. You talk about having a terrible soldering experience. Buy a cheap soldering iron. You'll find out in a hurry. So don't skimp on the soldering iron. Get a good one. Weller makes a good soldering station. There's a bunch of others out there. Once it's heated up, you want to be sure to clean the tip off. Get any residual solder that may have been left behind from the last job. I usually do a pretty good job of keeping that tip clean. What we're going to do now is tack. I'm going to go around. You know what? Before I tack, I'm going to flatten down this little piece of the lip, the overhang. I'm just going to score right along each corner and start folding it over. There we are. Okay, what we're going to do, just so you can see, because you're not going to be able to see when I turn this over, we're going to tack along the corners every few inches. Everywhere there's a major bend or corner, we're just going to tack along here and basically connect the sidewall to the front so that it's all a connected piece. The reason I do this is to be thorough. I know that the copper shielding does have a self-adhesive backing. However, I'm from Texas and I know what the extreme climates can do. Adhesives can come unadhered. And this way, I know for a fact it's not going anywhere. Unless I or someone else decides to unsolder it. we are. Now we're going to go ahead and cut through and open up these holes. Let's see. Okay. I'll do my best to get to comments on this video if you're watching live. If you have direct questions, private message me, especially for this video series, because this is more of an instructional thing, and these videos are going to be left up. I'm happy to answer your questions on the sideline. Okay, X-Acto knife. First thing I'm going to do is locate the holes that were drilled through the instrument coming from the bridge and the pickups. Found that. At least I thought I did. There we go. And we're just going to open those up with this X-Acto knife. See there? 3 little holes. Now, that one right there is an especially tough one to get a clean hole cut because it's coming in on the front of this cavity at an angle, so it's a very long oval shaped hole. You have to just really carefully use just the very tip of the X-Acto knife and cut a very clean hole. Now we're just going around each one of the holes for each of the pots. Show you what I'm doing. The one thing I'm trying not to do is create a tear in the copper. I don't want a big strip just tearing up and going up, you know, having to repair that. That's no good. If that ever happens, I take it all out and start over from scratch. It's a matter of function meeting form too, because when someone opens up this cavity and they see the work that I did, I want them to understand that I care, and I took some time and some thought. Now for the hole here for the jack. This one is probably the most difficult one, just because of where it's located and that, all that, but it's doable. Just take some convincing. There we go. And there we have it. We have holes located and drilled, and we have the cavity shielded. Alright, stick around for part 25. We are going to install all of the electronics, their components. We're going to prep the pickups, and we're going to install those bad boys. Alright, see you next one.